Hello everyone, my name is Leovold. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. And I've got a very special one for you today, mostly because there was an error in the recording because I have a voice changer mod on my microphone that I forgot to check and turn off before starting the recording. So I'm going to be doing a complete voiceover of this video, unfortunately, rather than live commentary. But I think it's still worth it. There was very good games. We had a lot of good instances that I can probably go back and talk about during the game, and I can maybe speed it up a little bit and see if you guys like that format a little bit better. Let me know in the comments down below if you would like to do that. Of course, leave a like and subscribe and keep tabs on everything else coming out. I'm going to be pushing out something hopefully once a day forever or something. I don't know. Until I can't do it anymore. So, what we ended up going into today was actually the Draven Scion discard list, which is very good at grinding down the opponent over time with constantly looping the two sad zombie boys of Lost Soul and Twinblade Revenant, with constantly discarding it with things like Draven Axes and some of the other cards of the deck to just slowly eat away at all of the units and other resources until they just can't hold on any longer, or until we play a Scion that's just ridiculously big and constantly brings himself back as well because we get a rally and, then we just kind of win the game at that point. But yeah, the main goal of the deck is just, a lot of units, a lot of discarding. Currently, we're running 2 Poro Cannons just as an additional discard outlet for potential survival skill shenanigans, which are also right here. Running 2 Draven's Biggest Fan because we want to make sure that we hit the Draven on curve or as early as possible every game to get the axes, to continue to loop the Twinblade Revenants, and potentially push his level up, which we actually do in one of the games. Zaunite Urchin and Grave Physician are mostly for cycling, on top of the Rummages, to make sure we're churning through our decks, digging for our Scions, digging for our burn, while also getting a lot of value from discarding cards like Fallen Rider or the Boom Baboon's Flame Chompers, and generating value that way on top of the Lost Soul. We're also running 3 Get Excited for some reach. Swamp Dredgers, also for cycles, but also puts in a lot of power on the board, on curve, very high tempo. Really do enjoy this card in the deck. Lost Soul is probably the biggest engine. As you notice in the curve, we actually don't have a single 4-drop, because this is our 4-drop. This right here is the only 4-drop we're ever going to need. So that's what we end up running. We also are running, I think is a little bit more unique to the list, at least in my opinion. I'm running a 3 of Ravenous Flock and the Arachnoid Sentry combo. Potentially, well, not potentially. It's mostly to turn off things like Poppy on curve. You just play Arachnoid Sentry and Flock it, and most of the time they're not going to have a good answer, and even if they do, they can't swing with a Poppy. It also sets up for a very nice potential open attack swing, or punishing developments on something like turn 6. If we're going on evens, we just go Sentry Sentry, take out 2 of your blockers, and send in with a couple of 3/2s and whatever else we have on the board. Very good at pushing damage in the later stages of the game. Really do enjoy it. Personally, I'm running it a lot. Could see it getting cut for something a little bit more on the burning side, like potentially Mystic Shots. I could see Mystic Shots going in. I could see something like Sump Fumes going in for some more potential removal options, since you are adding a lot of cards to your hand via axes and Poro Cannons and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of the deck we were running. We took it onto the Diamond Ladder, because that's where I currently am right now. And we ended up doing pretty well. And you'll go ahead and see the games. I'm going to be running out of time as I'm constantly rambling. But thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe. I'm going to, again, be pushing out videos every single day. Could really use the feedback on the format, especially now since I'm going to be doing a voiceover for the games, as we did have an audio recording issue this time. So do let me know if you like it this way. If you don't, I'll go back to the live stuff. But other than that, I will see you in the games. I'll see you tomorrow. Alright, so game number 1 for the video is gonna be against Bandle Tree with Noxus. This matchup usually comes down to, can we end the game quick enough through all of the X1s and X2s of their deck before they can set up the Bandle Tree win condition, which usually comes down to, can we deal with Scion? Or can we get Scion leveled? Can we get him on 7? Can we push through? Hopefully they don't have the mini morph. That's kind of the big, big finishing thing here. So we end up leaning into hopefully getting Draven, potentially getting a faster cure. If we keep Draven's biggest fan as a tutor, end up drawing into some mostly subpar stuff, but we do like the Zonite Urchin into the Fallen Rider to set up a nice turn 3 open attack and just develop a big board, as this deck can struggle with fearsome units. So a lot of them are usually around 2 power, 1 power, specifically in the early stages of the game. We do see the Bomber Twins come down, which is unfortunate, so the plan of the Risen Rider does kind of go awry, so we end up going with the Draven's biggest fan here to guarantee Draven on 3 and push in some damage that way. So we do see the Draven right here. Go ahead and just play him out. We know they already know that he's coming. We might as well just make sure, get him in. It's really not wrong to just play a Draven on round 3, especially if you have the attack token. It's just really good. It's really hard for them to deal with, and it pushes a good amount of value through with the quick attack and the axes. So we get in for 3, we trade down the board. We're not really too concerned with trading off units, as we do have the Lost Soul in hand. So we're really not too worried about it, honestly. Just constantly, we're going to have as many units as we probably want. We are very good at just developing board presence over time. So trading off the board, getting in some damage, usually pretty worth it for us. Here we see another Bomber Twins. We're seeing just a random 1/1, and I believe here we end up just developing... Actually, I do end up making a bit of a misplay here now that I remember. We end up going with the Lost Soul into the Revenant, which opens up Aloof Traveler shenanigans, potentially. Since it is round 4, Draven does end up eating a Buster Shot here, but we can save with these survival skills if we choose. I believe we do actually opt to do that with the Poro Cannon, just to keep Draven alive for now, but it's not super relevant. Actually, we don't end up doing that. What am I talking about? Alright, so we end up just giving up the Draven there. We go ahead and trade off. I believe we're actually going to use the survival skills. Okay, we use the survival skills here to get the free 3/2 kill and get a couple of extra units in the board. Because survival skills actually doesn't work with the Revenant on the board, because it would not save the Draven. So, yeah, that explains that. Alright, so we go ahead and develop the Risen Rider. Really no reason to not develop into this attack here. We want to put on as much pressure as possible. We do see the Aloof Travelers come down. It ends up discarding an Arachnoid Sentry, which we don't really need that many more here anymore. So we end up just go ahead, push some damage onto the 4/2, and we put on the Risen Rider using the axe and discarding the Fallen Rider in hand to just, put on some pressure. You'll see here the struggle that the Bandletree list can have with the fearsome units. As right here, we're able to push 9 damage on the ground because they don't have a fearsome blocker besides the one that we're pulling away with the Revenant. And we end up putting them down to 5 HP on round 5, which is pretty bad for them, to be perfectly honest. So round 6, we're not really scared of anything. We're in a very good position with the double fearsome units. We're just going to go ahead and play another Draven's biggest fan as like a more or less soft pass. We would like to, of course, see the Scion off the top, but getting the Draven here so we can get some axes and reset this Lost Soul is going to be quite nice, as well as we do see the Arachnoid Sentry come down on the Poppy with the Flock in hand, showing off the spicy removal combo tech. Here we actually get put into a strange position. I end up actually going ahead and trading off my 1/1 Elusive and the Draven's biggest fan because I'm scared of Group Shot taking out one of the healthier units. So we go ahead and just opt to trade both of those off. We flock the Poppy after combat resolves, and we go for an open attack on the develop. And I do believe at this point the opponent ends up conceding the game. I do remember correctly. Yes, the opponent ended up conceding here, and we take game number 1. Game number 2, we are going up against a Draven Caitlyn Tri-Beam Improbulator list. This is a pretty common thing to see. The Draven Tri-Beam lists have been pretty nice. We see more with Caitlyn now, as we see a lot of the Ezreal Shellfolk going around. I think a lot of people are testing for lineups, but Caitlyn also provides a lot more consistency with a lot of the removal for damaged units with the flash bomb traps. So that's one of the things that we see a lot here. We end up mulliganing for the Boom Baboon, and we keep the Sump Dredger so we can go, Boom Baboon on 2, Sump Dredger, discard a Flame Chomper on 3, and swing in for potentially 6 damage. That was the likelihood of going with that play, so we end up playing the Boom Baboon. Not seeing too much in the early game. As we do end up drawing the Draven, I go with the Draven instead, since we have the attack token. And we do see Caitlyn come down on 3. We go ahead and offer to just trade with the Boom Baboon and swing it with the Draven, as we see a second Caitlyn as the Piltover Peacemaker come down for the 3-1 to save the opponent 3 HP and put 2 Flash Bombs into our deck, which really isn't that big of a deal. Not too concerned about it. We go ahead and let that go. We go ahead and get our chip damage in, as they want to keep their unit alive. We get an additional 3 damage, another axe in our hand. And we're slowly going to eat them away at card advantage once we find our lost soul, which we don't right now have one, but we do have a lot of cycling with the Sump Dredger and the Grave Physician. Opponent goes ahead and shows us that they have a lost soul with the Sump Dredger there. Here I decide to go ahead and develop the Grave Physician, I believe, because here we're currently looking at potentially using survival skills defensively, because I'm expecting the opponent to attack since they have a very nice board. So what I opt to do here is play the Grave Physician, discarding the Flame Chompers and cycling for another unit, and we'll see what we end up doing here in a second. But what I try to do here is use the axe and get a favorable trade and deal with the Caitlyn using the survival skills here. So we end up putting the axe onto the 2-2, so it trades up into the 4-3, and then we save the Draven with the survival skills, which ends up clearing their board and setting up for a very nice open attack on the following turn, which feels pretty good. So we end up, I believe we just end up playing out a Zaunite Urchin onto the Fallen Rider, just to cycle some more cards, set that up for later. And we go to the next turn. Now, Draven being damaged and at 1 HP means he's probably going to die to basically anything, so I actually opt to not go for the open attack here and develop a Risen Rider so we could potentially push some more damage in the case of something like Time Winder. Here we go ahead and take the open attack, seeing that the opponent doesn't have much to do. We open up with pulling the 3-1 out of the way to get a better trade with a 4-2. As we see opponent using a Get Excited, I believe, onto the Draven here, discarding the Flame Chompers. There we go. And we go ahead and push 6 damage, putting them to 11 on round 5, since this deck can really push in a lot of damage if they don't have much answers to like all of the potential units coming through. So we go ahead and develop another Sump Dredger, discarding the Lost Soul, which was actually a misplay, as we could have kept the Lost Soul in hand to play around Aloof Travelers and set up another 4-2 Fearsome unit as well, and we end up getting punished for that pretty heavily here by the Aloof Travelers coming down. Just kidding, we drew a Lost Soul, so it doesn't matter. So we go ahead and we develop a Twin Blade Revenant here. Not really much else that we really want to do. It pulls away the 3-4, allows for a little bit more damage to come through, which is going to be quite handy. I do believe here that we end up taking this pass, but we could also see just axe, get the 4... Yeah, we do actually axe the Fallen Rider to develop another 4-2 Fearsome, so we can sneak in some damage with the open attack, pulling the one of the only Fearsome units away, and pushing in at least 4 damage with Fearsome units, as we do see another Get Excited from the opponent, discarding a Scorched Earth. And you can see that we are actually really up on card advantage now, not only because we have double Lost Soul, but because we're forcing the opponent to use Get Excited without them having axes, which is a pretty big deal for this list, as they're going down in cards to just try to not die, and we're going to be pushing in, even still now, we're pushing in quite a bit of damage here, because we do see the 4-2 getting trade off with, we chump block the 4-2. We still push in, and we put them to 9 damage left to take. we put their Nexus to 9. I'm terrible at this commentary. Thanks, sorry about that. Anyway, moving on. We end up discarding the Lost Soul, resetting that again playing into the Aloof Travelers, which was a misplay again on my part. But we do end up drawing the Scion, so we're going to have a way to finish the game next turn. As long as we don't lose the Scion because we misplayed with the Aloof Travelers, we could have actually discarded like the Axe instead, kept the Lost Soul in our hand, and we would have protection from Scion getting discarded. Now they end up going with the open attack here, which I'm totally fine with. I end up just taking the 3, keeping the board wide, and then playing the Scion immediately after because they don't have a way to deal with it outside of Tri-Beam, which would give me the rally, and that would push through lethal damage. So we end up just going to skip the block here. We end up just taking it. We end up playing the Draven's Biggest Fan. It's just a smidge of a soft pass here. Just to, further develop the board before we throw down the Scion. Maybe they tap out for something like a Farron, and we just get to go for a bigger open attack next turn with the Scion, on top of getting the rally to finish off the game. It's mostly what I was trying to play around in this particular position, but after thinking about it, it's like the only real answer they have for this is like Tri-Beam, because we saw Scorched Earth discarded, we saw 2 Get Excited discarded. So we go ahead and play down the Scion, and we do see not much come from the opponent at this point. As here we do see the Tri-Beam come out for 7. We go ahead and let that resolve. They get a Rekindler, getting a second Caitlyn, which is honestly kind of funny. But we do end up just seeing the surrender come out from the opponent here after using the Flock on the 4-1. So we get to push through with additional damage, make sure one of our units gets through. Scion would immediately deal at least 6, which would put them to 8 at minimum if they took optimal blocks. And we go ahead and pick up the win in game number 2. And here we're going to go ahead and shed. This is, in fact, Diamond Ladder ranked on NA, as we do hit Diamond 3, and I have to, drop that in a little bit. And then we go into game number 3 against Ping City. Ping City, I feel like, is a fairly poor matchup on my end, but not unwinnable, as we do, again, not have healing. They have a lot of incidental burn damage, and it becomes a bit of a challenge to try and deal with that over the course of the game. Here we end up going for a full mulligan. I really want to see Draven. I really want to see Lost Soul. We do end up seeing multiple Dravens, so we cash in this Draven's Biggest Fan as just a vanilla 2-1. We offer the trade with the Crackshot Corsair. They don't take it, so we get a free 2 damage in on turn 1, which sets up our clock. Turn 2, we have a nice Boon Baboon into the Draven, into potentially axing Draven. So we do see the Stone Stackers. We go ahead and lay down the Boon Baboon. Opponent attempts to attack, and we go ahead and take the trade with the Boon Baboon and the Stone Stackers, taking 2 damage from the Crackshot Corsair's skill and the impact. As we go to turn number 3, and lo and behold, we play Draven. Who would have guessed? We play Draven on 3. Play Draven on 3, get the axe. Opponent, I believe, plays... What do they play here? They go ahead and play a Contrologist and just start to gunk up the board. So I do end up opting to just attack here, I believe, which there is a potential line of axing the Flame Chompers and pulling the 2-2 out of the way, so we can force a potential trade with the 1-2, which we do want to get rid of the 1-2 as soon as possible. But we go ahead and just go for this open attack, and they actually opt to just give me the Crackshot Corsair anyway, which I believe was a missed block. I believe they should have blocked with the 2-2 there, unfortunately, so they can keep accruing the incidental burn damage, but we see that they have another Crackshot anyway, so that's really not that big of a deal for them, it seems. Our opponent currently at 15. We're going to go to trade for the Crackshot here to try and stop the burn, as we take an additional 2 damage from the Conchologist and 1 from the skill, putting us both to 15, but I want to make sure that we get the incidental burn damage off of the board as we go ahead and try to cycle, putting in the Flame Chompers and trying to cycle for a little bit more relevant stuff, as most of the cards in our hand are axes, and a Scion, which is not leveled yet, and the Sentry, which doesn't do great, as we see deckhand into a perfectly lined up Make It Rain which feels really bad. I debate using survival skills here, but I decide against it since we have a second Draven in our hand already. I think it's better to keep the survival skills for later. But it is unfortunate that we lose our entire board to the barrel Make It Rain, and we can't really develop anything here. So we opt to just play another Draven right here, as we do see the Twisted Fate gold card come down, which is unfortunate, but not something we can really deal with. I'd rather see the gold card over the red card, which is pushing more damage to our face and potentially dealing more to the rest of the board later on in the game. So not seeing the Draven attack is totally fine. We have plenty of access as well, so it's not that big of a deal. We do see the Poison Dart come down. I go ahead and cash in the survival skills to keep Draven alive for now, as I do believe we need to keep Draven to potentially close out this game. We do offer the trade with a 2-2, as they all have straight up 2-2 stat lines, and I'm trying to prevent as much damage as possible next turn before they can have more potential shenanigans, like a potential line them up, Make It Rain to clear the board. I decide to get the value from the 2-2 right then and there. We do see a tenor come down. I believe I opt to play a Sump Dredger, discarding the Lost Soul to try and stave off the attack and set up for something a little bit bigger and try to push the Scion level. We do see Sump Dredger going down on the Fallen Rider, actually. I believe I'm trying to play around Aloof Travelers again, as I misplayed a lot in the previous game. So we go ahead and opt to offer some blocks here. Go ahead and offer the trade for the Draven, as we do have the Fearsome unit in the back pocket. Try to get out the final Fearsome blocker, as we do see a second Make It Rain come down to really punish this attack. So we should have actually swapped the Draven with the 4-2 there, offered a different trade, so we would at least still have the 3-2 gone. Unfortunately, we are at 9. We do have a lot more cards than the opponent does, but we are really low on HP, and they have a lot of burn in their deck. We do end up playing the Scion, which is not leveled currently, but we can level it at burst speed with the Axe, so I'm not super worried about it, and I'm trying to bait the opponent to try to use removal so we get the rally, thinking, oh, we can't do anything about it, but it might not have been the best play in hindsight, as we do see that the 2 axes in hand are visible. It's likely that I have any unit in hand, so we go ahead and opt to deal 7. We could potentially push an additional 4 damage here by discarding the Lost Soul to put the opponent to 5, but I don't see the relevancy in doing that. I would rather just keep the axes for a potential second swing and maybe continue to play into I don't have a way to level the Scion right now, and this is my only option. We do see the Gangplank come down, which is going to effectively be the end of the game, more or less, as Gangplank is kind of hard to deal with. We do end up blocking the Gangplank, but we do have to take a lot of damage here. I keep the Get Excited to play around potential double up, as they do run it here, so we can double up our own Scion, discarding the Lost Soul, getting the Rally, and challenging the Keg, as the spell would fizzle, and we get in a 9 burn damage. So we go ahead and soft pass with the Arachnoid Sentry to try and push through some damage, and just get a 3-2 into play, still holding up the potential for the Get Excited our own Scion shenanigans. But we do end up seeing, I believe it's line them up into knock them down face for exact lethal, and then they end up having the Pokey Stick to close out the game, which is rather unfortunate. I do think I may have misplayed this game a little bit by not using the Lost Soul sooner and not pushing the additional 4 damage, because if we could have drew the second Get Excited here, or potentially have some way to cycle through a little bit quicker, we may have had another way to play around this exact scenario. But it's unfortunate. We do end up losing this game. I think it was winnable. I think I may have played it incorrectly. Moving on into game number 4. I believe this is game number 4. We go into another Fizz, Poppy, Bandle, Tree list with Noxus. We go ahead and mulligan 1 Draven, 1 Lost Soul, as we don't want all of them in our hand, and we pick up the Scion in a Biggest Fan. Our hand is not fantastic, but it shapes up fairly well later into the game, as we do find the Sump Dredger. We go ahead and play the Draven's Biggest Fan, just as a vanilla 2-1, and offer the trade with the Fizz. when the opponent goes in for the attack, which, you know, is just something we have to do because we want to save face, we want to keep their board small, and we have the Lost Soul to outgrind them in the mid to late game. So keeping their board small and trading units is not that big of a deal for me. Unfortunately, we have nothing to do on turn 2, so we go ahead and take the pass. They opt to play House Spider, putting their Bandletree win condition to 4 out of 10 regions. Here we draw another Draven, which is nothing bad. Not bad, not great. We do opt to play Draven here as we do have 2, and I want to keep the 4/3 in the back pocket in case they have a potential aloof Travelers, so we want to keep the Lost Soul in hand again to play around that and keep the Scion safe. So we end up going with Boom Baboon here, I believe. So we have a discard target for the Sump Dredger. Yeah, we do end up going with the Boom Baboon here. Discard target for the Sump Dredger. Set up a potential Axe into Whirling Death to level the Draven early to potentially push through more damage with giving Draven Overwhelm, get more axes into our hand, as they do have a lot of chomp blockers, and this is a potential way for me to push through damage. So they go ahead and opt for the double block here, and we go ahead with the Draven's Whirling Death to go ahead and save our 3/1, clear their board, more or less, and get the Draven flip with no issues. This also keeps him alive via Buster Shot. Does not save him from Flock, does not save him from Scorched Earth, but it does save him from specifically a Buster Shot. As he goes to 4 HP, and Draven gets Overwhelm, which is very relevant in this matchup, I believe. As they do have a lot of X2s, a lot of X1s, so Draven being able to have quick attack and constantly go through these things with Overwhelm is very, very relevant here. It is notable that the opponent is very far along on their Bandletree win condition, and this is the critical turn of turn 5, where if we see tree here, which would be relatively low tempo, but if they did have the tree, it would not feel very good. We go ahead and opt to play Sump Dredger, discarding the Lost Soul, as we do not have an Aloof Traveler in the opposing hand. It seems I put them off the read on having the Aloof Travelers, and it trades very well into the Poppy. We go ahead and get some trades. I do take the block with the Draven here, which may be incorrect in hindsight. Could have potentially just taken an additional 3 damage to save Draven from a potential Buster Shot coming down, as that is active right now. Plus, we have a lot of axes in our hand, which we really don't need that many. So we go ahead and discard 1 to try and find something a little bit more relevant to play, and we do find another Lost Soul, which isn't bad. We do see the Buster Shot come down onto the Draven. Unfortunately, since I took the block, I do get a bit punished for that. But we do still have double Lost Soul. We have the Scion in the back pocket. And we do have Sentry and Flock in our hand, which is very nice. So we go ahead and we play a Twin Blade Revenant here, and we go after the Elusive unit. As none of our attacks here are really all that good, I do end up just taking the Elusive unit out of the equation now, rather than taking that pass, which is arguably a better play to just take the pass and not let them develop and further their win condition, as they do play the Bandle City Mare into an Aloof Travelers, discarding the Lost Souls that we happened to draw earlier. We do see the Poro Sled come down, furthering the win condition of the Bandletree. I'm not sure what exactly we do in this instance. I believe we do just end up playing the Scion and hoping that they do not have the mini morph. So we do just play Scion on 7. I believe we set up for a potential open attack next turn. As we do have the Revenant going after the 3/4, we can pull with the 0/1, the 5/5, and hope to get there with them potentially not having mini morph and us having a Flock in our hand to potentially flock the Scion, but they do end up having the mini morph off the top, which is unfortunate for us, but it's not that big of a deal. We do still have a lot of pressure. They're trading down most of their board. We could have went after the Mare there instead of the 3/4, but I wanted to be able to push damage with the Scion Overwhelm in case of no mini morph, which ended up not being the case. So we do end up playing another Revenant here. Nothing too worrisome about that. We do end up obliterating one of the Lost Souls as the Revenant dies when we have a full grip, which is unfortunate. I did not play around that. I could have easily done that by just discarding one of the axes with an axe, put an extra point of HP, or put an extra attack power on one of the units, and we would have had a second Lost Soul in hand. Not that we needed all of them the entire time, but that was a punt on my part. We go ahead and go into the Sump Dredger here as it trades cleanly into the Poppy again and draw a third Lost Soul, making up for the misplay that I had earlier. The opponent does go for an attack here with the entire board, trying to push through damage. At this point, I'm starting to get the read that they do, in fact, not have tree. So we go ahead and start setting up to clear their board away for a potential big attack. I do put the axe there to trade evenly with the Poro Sled, so we get that out of the way, and their board is down to a couple of 2/2s. They're down to 2 cards, and I get a full turn to develop into an attack, which is very nice. Here, I believe we just go with a rummage on the axe and the Lost Soul to try and find something a little bit more relevant than what I have currently. We end up finding Boom Baboon and a Flock, so we develop one of the Revenants now. We play into, again, Aloof Travelers. I should be playing a little bit better around that, but that's okay. We develop the Boom Baboon here as we develop, I believe, the Grey Physician onto the Flame Chompers and try to draw it to Scion, which we don't find, but that's okay. We do see the Aloof Travelers come down, and we do end up losing the second Lost Soul Twin Blade Revenant. But we do draw into a Draven, so I'm kind of okay with that, as Draven is a little bit more relevant at this point than a couple of 4/3 challengers. Here I'm mostly just looking to try and push as much damage as possible by putting on as much power as possible, playing the Sump Dredger, discarding the axe, and just developing a very wide board. Here I end up going to trade with the 3/4 Aloof Travelers with the 4/3, and I opt to actually not pull anything with the 0/2, as it doesn't really get me any value. We're not pushing them to lethal, and this way I can still get a lot of trades out of the way now if they so choose. I know Draven is very safe, as we've seen one mini morph, and they probably don't want to use it on the Draven. They want to save it for a potential sign in the future, as most of these lists are usually on 1 or 2. They do go ahead and full block the whole board. We push into damage. Their entire board goes away, and we feel pretty good about our position, as we do have many, many more cards. A lot of those cards draw. We have 2 Arachnoid Sentries to potentially push in a very big attack on the next turn. We go ahead and cycle away an axe instead of the Lost Soul, playing around Aloof Travelers again for no reason, since we've already seen several. But having the Lost Soul in hand and potentially playing around another Aloof Travelers, I think, is a little bit better than keeping an extra axe, since we already have like 5 or 6. We go ahead and go with the Poro Cannon into the Fallen Rider that we casually drew off the top, as the opponent plays Mountain Sojourners that they found off of the Telescope, and we go ahead and Sentry that unit now to prevent the AoE buff onto the 2/1 potentially if they go for the attack. Go ahead and show us an Emperor's Deus, which is not super relevant here, as we go ahead and go with the double Flock onto the 4/5 to set up for a very nice attack, I believe. Well, we actually go with the Twin Blade Revenant first. We just develop a very wide board, and we go ahead and go with the double Flock. Leading into an open attack, pulling the only blocker with the 0/2 and pushing 17 damage that I end up miscounting, as we go ahead and accept the attack and then look at the eye and realize, oh, I could have committed the axe and pushed lethal damage here. We don't get punished, unfortunately. We don't get punished, fortunately, because they do have the Pokey Stick, so we cannot do anything about that. For some reason, I hover the Draven's Whirling Death to destroy the 2/1 and get a couple more axes in my hand and keep it 0/2, but I feel like it's just better to just cash in the axe and just get a trade with the 0-2 while they gave me a window to respond, and I'm not pushing through enough lethal damage with the axe. So we go ahead and go for that. The opponent does draw a card. We put them to 3, and their board is entirely clear except for a Emperor's Dais, which does not do much. They go ahead and play another Aloof Travelers. We lose a Sentry, but draw into a Get Excited to close out the game. Thank you, opponent. Very much appreciate that. So the main reason we won that game is because they didn't end up drawing Bandletree. I feel like if they drew Bandletree a little bit sooner, we would have been in a much more dangerous position, but they just ended up not hitting the landmark win condition here. And that goes for game number 4, climbing in Diamond 3 on the Draven Scion discard list, which ends up going fairly well for everybody involved. End up going 3-1 on the day. We do end up having a mulligan game that technically we would be 4-1, but the opponent decided to scoop on round 3 for some reason, so we end up just not using that game here. But other than that, that's all we have for the video today. Hopefully my commentary was useful, or at least entertaining to a point, as I'm not very much used to doing stuff like this. I would have rather kept it with the live commentary so I can go through my thought process in the moment. I feel like that would have been better, but we did have the recording issue today, so let me know if you liked it this way better or if you would prefer live. Obviously, since we have the error here, I figured it would be better to just go ahead and go with that. Other than that, I hope you all have a very pleasant day, and I will see you in the next